Listening to the rhythmic sounds of the hide grinding off the metal from the blade, she couldn't tell how much time had passed of her just concentrating on the task at hand. Though it wasn't obvious, Claire could slowly hear the difference the hide made on the steel. When she lifted the skin of the monster from the dagger, her eyes raised in surprise at what she saw. It looks pretty scratched up, Claire thought to herself. Don't worry about it. Those scratches go away as you move on to the next skin, Hannah commented as she rubbed the monster's hide on her own weapon. It's just going through and smoothing out the uneven parts. That's when Claire remembered that such a thing would happen back when Dragny had done the same thing to the weapon she'd forged to demonstrate the process. Claire sighed in relief, thinking back to her initial surprise until Dragny moved on to the next steps. Getting up, Claire tossed the used material into a waste bin before going back to the containers filled with the various levels of roughness of the monster skins. Grabbing some of the stuff next to the one she just used, Claire went back to where she was sitting and continued to the next step. Quickly, she eyed the progress that Hannah had made with her own weapon. Claire was curious to see if it looked similar to what Dragny had shown them. Though it wasn't the same polish as what Dragny had shown them, the blade was still able to have a fuzzy reflection of their surroundings in the workshop. It was like a mirror where steam from the showers misted the reflection and obscured the figure. It won't be long until you could check your makeup with the blade, Claire thought to herself as she returned to her own weapon. Having changed the grit of the leather used, Claire noticed a difference with the sound and feel. I guess the previous hide did a good job at shaving away the deep valleys in the metal. Claire imagined a hilly landscape when an excavator began digging up the ground. Though it wasn't flat and had a bunch of smaller grooves, it was a bigger difference from its previous form. Remember to keep the hide wet. Hannah turned her head slightly to Claire before returning to her work. Nodding, Claire dipped the dagger into a container filled with the same energy-infused water used for the coke. When the blade was dipped into the water, it released a slight cloud of metal dust. She pulled out the weapon and admired how the water droplets rolled down the blade. It didn't have the same appearance as what Hannah's was, but the weapon felt as though it had potential. With the surface of the metal wet, Claire began to rub the gritty hide on the blade, the sound of the scraping noise continuing once again. This time, she'd occasionally dip the dagger into the water to get rid of the fine metal shavings from the surface. Each time it was pulled, there was a brighter feel to it. Though this isn't as difficult as everything else before, I get the feeling that I'm still far from where I need to be. Claire couldn't help but think to herself. She remembered the weapons they'd seen inside the store in the guild earlier, and how the appearance of the weapons were leagues ahead of them. She tried not to think about the thousands of daggers they need to produce in order to get to the necessary level to be considered competent. Even if we do continue to make these daggers, we'll still need to gain experience making other weapons. With how many are in our group, it's not rational to think that throwing daggers is all that'll be used. Claire sighed as her hands pressed the monster skin on the dagger. After we finish getting competent with daggers, I think we should move on to making swords. Claire made a mental note. In her mind, she imagined both of their families wielding powerful weapons once they left the safety of the underground cities. Once we get good enough, we'll be able to try to get our hands on gems to put into the cold weapons and begin to use the magical abilities of the energy surrounding the world. She grinned at the image.